We'd like to begin this podcast by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging.
This episode of Talking Couch Potatoes is brought to you by Henry Houndwear, the brand that all the best dressed hounds are wearing. To find yours, go to henryhoundwear.com.au.
I was going to say welcome back, Maleficent, but I've got some very sad news today, listeners, that our Maleficent isn't with us. She's not gone completely from the planet, but she's not with us.
Thank God.
She's not with us today, is she, Jem?
No.
No, she couldn't
We're
make it
very
today.
glum.
We're a little glum, and I'm going to have to we'll soldier on, won't we?
Yeah.
In each other's presence.
We've got some good guests coming on.
Mel met a greyhound. I think it was just on the street, actually, not long ago. Found out it had some issues with its liver and decided to donate her liver to the greyhound. I said to her, Mel, this is going to be a problem. You only have one liver. She wouldn't listen to me, and of course now there's been complications. So she's waiting on her own transplant because she gave her own liver to a greyhound. Mel, I appreciate your efforts, but you got to think before you act sometimes.
I wonder if our guest today is going to agree with whether that's compatible or not. A human liver in an animal.
She didn't even think that far, Jem. She just saw a greyhound and needed help and said, take it out now. So they did, and now she's paying the price. Mel, hope you get better soon. Hope your transplant comes in because we miss you. It's typical Mel behaviour, isn't it? Typical Mel. She'll just do anything. Anyway, hi Mel. Hope you're listening in from your hospital bed.
We miss you, Mel.
Jem,
hope you're feeling better soon.
It's episode 56. I've got a country update. More countries have jumped on board.
Fabulous.
We're matching countries for episodes again.
Wow.
56 countries. We've just added Taiwan, Malta, and Haiti.
Wow.
How's that?
Serendipitous.
Why is it serendipitous?
Just the same.
Oh, the numbers being the same.
The numbers being the same.
Good word.
Thank you.
Showing off with your words already.
Yeah, well, I had to practice. I had about an hour's notice this morning.
Yeah.
That I'm co-hosting. So.
Because of old organ donor Mel has thrown everything into flux.
We love you, Mel.
Yeah. Anyway, what's going on, Gemma? You're going to have to be Mel today, so tell me what's happening in the world of Free the Hounds. I know there was a survey released a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, Monday the 24th of November, something that Free the Hounds was working in collaboration with Grey 2K USA Worldwide and had organised a survey done by the professional group Demos AU and was conducted over 2,895 voters in Western Australia were surveyed, and
it's a good sample size for a survey.
It comes within all the minimum requirements for a professional,
statistically relevant.
Exactly.
It's so before the pro racers start whinging, you only talked to three. It's a professional survey. It's done under all the professional sort of minimum survey sample size.
Correct.
Allowing for this and that, so it's fair income.
Yeah. They're professional statisticians that do it.
What did they come up with, Jem?
Well, the main thing is that 60% of voters think Parliament should vote to phase out greyhound racing.
That's a solid majority.
And the other 40%, a large portion of that were undecided or didn't really care, or it's not in their worldview at all. So what they did is they asked these initial questions, and then they presented 3 different arguments from both sides. So anti-racing, that focused on things like injuries, and then pro-racing that focused on, for example, employment. Now, after those arguments were presented, there was more of a shift towards the majority still wanting to phase out. So it went, for example, the question about the injuries and euthanasia rates up to 64%.
Yep.
So that was quite a jump, which is heartening because it makes us realise that people do care about animals and the fact that they are suffering and they die. Some of the other things that were really important is we saw a majority across all the categories. So every single electorate in Western Australia had a majority that is favourable towards phasing out the sport, and quite a minority that is in support of its remaining as status quo.
Yep.
as well as across political affiliations. So the voters were asked who they vote for, and every single group came back favourable in support of phasing out greyhound racing.
So it crosses the political divide.
It does. And there was a really important question there. It did say that if voters would be swayed by a political party that decided to phase out greyhound racing, and it was very minimal. So, some of these parties would not actually lose many voters, and in fact, the majority of their supporters are supporting a phase out. So really important stuff and exciting to send out there. And thank you so much to Demos AU as well as Grey 2K USA Worldwide, who are huge supporters of Free the Hounds and greyhounds everywhere in the world. Their mission is to end greyhound racing worldwide. So
I was just having a look at it today, and it's actually quite an involved survey. If you want to do a deep dive into it, it's not just a do you want it or not thing. It's got some really interesting sort of breakdowns. So you can check it out at freethehounds.com.au. I think they got it chucked up there, haven't they?
Yep, we sure do.
My other thing, Jem, is I'm wondering, we've just got this inquiry coming out soon. I imagine that would even swing even further. Once the inquiry reveals to the community the sort of economic, physical welfare, gambling, detrimental aspects of this sport, I reckon more people, because a lot of people don't even know it's still going.
That's right. It's going to shine a light.
So if they've got such negative views, when it's just an amorphous sort of idea, when we start showing them exactly what this represents, I've got a funny feeling that's going to jump significantly.
Huge. Yeah. And looking back at that survey, there is a lot of people that are under the don't know, don't care. And as someone who is often in that space of being on the ground, doing outreach, petitioning, I was out in the CBD of Perth asking people to write submissions. Once people actually learnt a little bit about it, those people who didn't know, didn't care,
suddenly
definitely became supporters of phasing out the sport, because once they hear that dogs are getting maimed and killed, it definitely shifts people. There's something about dogs that we all love. We've got this very common goal of looking after them. They're our best friends.
Yep. So looking forward to the inquiry shining a light so that we can respond with our eyes open rather than, with turning a blind eye. Speaking of people caring about animals and stuff, I stay away from the socials generally. I'm a social media exile. However, I will jump in now and then on Free the Hounds to have a squiz at what's happening. And Free the Hounds did a post not long ago about the two poor creatures that died at Mandurah. 2 dogs in one evening, which makes eight dogs in Mandurah already, which makes it the most dangerous track in the year. We always get a bit of silly commentary on it. One bloke came in and finally said what I reckon they all truly believe, and he said, "It's part of the game. Get over it." So partly I'm glad that finally one of the pro racers has been honest enough to say they don't give a rat's ass about these dogs dying. And I'm not saying all pro racers are like that, but it really struck me, in the face of the death of these 2 beautiful creatures. I'm thinking of my beautiful ones, Bunny and Bo, if anything happened to them. The answer is it's part of the game. And I think if we boil down to it and take the economics away, the government funding away, all of this other stuff, the bottom line is they're okay. They'll tolerate death and injury because they love racing dogs and they love having a punt. I think ultimately the pro racers come clean like this bloke did, as awful as it was to hear, just finally admit that, because you're not going to stop the death and the injury, so just admit you're willing to tolerate it because you want this thing to keep going.
This is the thing. It's like whether they're participants or, officials in Racing Wagering WA, they just skirt around this topic where this is collateral damage. But if they do admit that, then that is reflecting the integrity of the sport. People don't like that. It doesn't help for their social license, and they're trying to build social license at the moment. So to come out and say, so what? And this is part of the game. Get over it.
At least he's admitting it is a part of the game. Like 2 things there. 1, that they'll tolerate it. 2, admitting it is, and it always will be. They've tried, people have tried to make this safer. We know that regardless of what you do, dogs are going to get hurt and they're going to die. So you have to land on a position where you're okay with that or you're not. And that way we can have a substantive argument about that, about a debate about values. At least I can have an honest discussion with someone when they say, yeah, I'm okay with tolerating this. Anyway, getting hepped up.
You're getting hepped up.
Let's move on, Jem. Part of the thing Free the Hounds does, you need money to advocate, don't you? You need resources.
Yes.
You need funds.
Yes, we had our annual Tin Shake Day today, actually. That was conducted down in the Murray Street Mall outside the underground station, and we had several volunteers and our ambassadors down there winning hearts and minds like they do. And so thank you to everybody that saw them and donated today. And yeah, huge thank you to our volunteers. They have just been working so tirelessly lately, whether it's been the petition, then the submissions, writing to our MPs, and then also events. Yeah, it's been non-stop.
It's non-stop. I know, mate, because I've got, I live with someone who does this non-stop. I barely get any.
Yeah, Bo. Poor Bo. Bo is one of the best ambassadors there is. He's just got such an adorable face. People fall in love with him. Like all the dogs.
Hi, Bo boy. Jem, the next big thing coming up is we interviewed this amazing artist actually not that long ago. Elliot Fox, episode 53, the St. Grey Art Exhibition. It was really interesting. If you haven't listened to that one, go back and listen, because it was the first time we've interviewed an artist. We've interviewed politicians and advocates and physios and vets, but the first artist. And he's got his exhibition coming up soon, hasn't he, Jem?
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. It's in Mosman Park. It's called the Camelot Art Club. We're having our opening night on Tuesday the 13th of January, and the exhibition runs for a week from then up until the 21st of January. You can actually go on to his website, and a lot of the art pieces are already up for auction, and it's exciting for us to have something fun to do. Like, this is a celebration of greyhounds, and a lot of these pieces are very thought-provoking, and so we're hoping a lot of people just come along that might be in that category of don't know, don't care, that can come along and learn a bit about greyhounds and their plight in this completely different arena of the arts world. So we're really excited, and we're going to have a lot of houndies there. There's a nice big park over the road from it, so if the houndies need to go for a wee, we can accommodate that.
So that's a St. Grey Art Exhibition, Mosman Park, Camelot Arts Club. Tuesday the 13th is opening night, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And I believe Elliot's donating a large part of the sales to animal welfare groups.
He's donating all of the sales.
All of it?
Yeah, to all the different groups that have helped him with this art exhibition that has toured all over Australia. So, yeah, he's definitely got a big heart, and he is, in it to really help the greyhounds.
Nice one, Elliot. I'll be there. Hope to see other people there. Anything else happening, Jem, or can we move on to our wonderful guest?
Let's go. I'm very excited.
We get to speak today to someone who's not only an advocate themselves, but also understands the pressures and the stresses and the ramifications of living a life of advocacy, and can speak to that as well. So can't wait to have a chat to Anita, who's on in just a minute. See you soon. It's that time, Gemma. We've got our wonderful guest on now. Anita is a life and mindset coach, particularly for animal rights advocates. She is a former veterinarian who left quite some time ago due to the empathy, fatigue and burnout that I think a lot of vets go through. She's also just active herself in the animal welfare community in general. She's an Animal Justice Party volunteer, and I think she's got quite a bit to tell us about in terms of the impact of that kind of work and what it means. Welcome aboard, Anita. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm very well. Thank you, Matt.
Good. Lovely to have you here. I was speaking earlier that I work in a field that's on a high stress. Empathy, sort of fatigue and burnout can step in. But you know quite a bit about this. You've got a website as well, which is, for those who want to know more about Anita and the work she does, it's www.theveganmindsetcoach.com. So go and check that out as well. But before we get into all of that, I'm just curious, Anita, can you tell us about your first encounter with greyhounds in particular?
Oh, yeah, that's a memory. So my very first absolute certain memory of coming across greyhounds was actually first year of veterinary school, walking into our first wet lab dissection class.
Oh.
So we're talking a big open room that can house over 100 vet students at a time. And as we were all queuing to get through the door to get into the lab, and I noticed a few people in front of me, this girl, she stops in the doorway, she turns around and she walks away. And I'm like, oh gosh. And then a few steps later, I realized what that was about. Now, I never saw her again. I'm assuming she left vet school at that point. But the reason that she'd done that was because as we entered, this giant sort of hall was filled with these tables, and on them were probably about 20 to 25 greyhounds. Now, they were dead. They were cold. They had been refrigerated. That was my introduction to greyhounds and the world of greyhounds. I had no idea. And initially, I must say, I was confused. Why is it only greyhounds that we're dealing with? In vet school, because right from the first year through to the fifth year, the dogs we were dealing with, the dogs we learned all our anatomy, our dissection, our physiology, our surgery, our euthanasia, our revival, everything we did with greyhounds.
Right.
And it was sometime later that our lecturer explained that it's because there's this endless stream of discards from the racing industry. It's very convenient for the industry to be able to donate these dogs, where the vet school doesn't have to negotiate with other organisations or with pet owners to donate their pets' bodies for research as such. So we just had this endless supply. It was just wasted. It was horrific.
I'm struck by the sense of how that exemplifies this industry and the amount of dogs that it just runs through. The other part of me feels a little sad that your first experience of greyhound, my first one was meeting my beautiful bunny girl, and it was a joyous, and she jumped up and hugged me. But the other side of what goes on is they don't all go to happy homes and have a forever afterlife. Some of them end up in a morgue or on a slab. Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And how did you go with that? How did you sort of reconcile that?
Like the rest of us, I think we had to weigh up our options, which was either go ahead and do what we needed to do with these dogs in order to learn what we needed to learn so that we could help animals, which is what we're all there to do.
Yeah.
And the way that we were being sold this is these animals are going to be killed anyway. They might as well do their bit for the other animals.
Bit useful. The death may as well have meant something. Yeah.
So as horrible as it was, we had to buy into that narrative and appreciate them and be grateful for them, for what they gave us in terms of learning, so that we could then go on and help our patients later on.
What a bit of cognitive dissonance you must have been managing with that.
Oh, horrific.
Yeah.
And you know what I thought it would be? I thought it would come to an end when we finished vet school. I'm like, okay, now we're graduated. We're now employed veterinarians. Our job is now to help our patients. We've taken the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah.
And I arrive in my very first job, new graduate, very keen young vet, only to discover this endless stream of greyhounds coming through the practice every week, coming through to be euthanized. Again, there was this arrangement which I was completely unaware of prior, where in exchange for us dealing with their discards, we got the blood. We got the blood donation. So my first introduction to greyhounds in veterinary practice was not helping them, not treating them, but putting them on a metal bench, sedating them, draining the blood out of them into our donation bags, and then putting them to sleep.
Oh, jeez.
That was it. So that was just adding further to that kind of horror. And now I was in conflict. I had taken this oath to help these animals, and here I was using and exploiting them.
Yeah, and that just the image of that, or the idea of that, of look, here's this transactional arrangement here, and the currency we're using is these creatures' blood. I've never heard it quite so starkly spoken about.
Yeah. And the other thing that was really stark to me was this incredible contrast that I was witnessing right there in that same room, which was there were the pampered pooches that we were serving. Their owners were paying thousands of dollars of treatment to be given the blood of these dogs, these other dogs that were essentially like a slave class. They'd been born into slavery. They'd lived there their entire miserable short lives, only to come in and to be exploited right to the last drop of their blood, which was then given over to the beloved pooches. It was like, the social contrast between these two.
That's extraordinary. I've really never, I've read some and heard some shocking stuff. This is landing so viscerally with me, this idea. And you mentioned slave class. I made that direct comparison that basically this is a turning point, similar to when we decided to stop using a certain class of human as slaves. We need to stop using a certain class of dog as slaves. And I think it's spot on. Maybe it's hyperbolic to a degree, but in function, what you're describing is very much one rule for one sort of aspect of a community, which is love and money spent and pampering. And the other rule for the other one is they end up on a slab, or they end up getting drained of their blood to give to the other people in that community. I don't know. I'm hepped up again, Jem. I don't know what else.
It's a powerful story, and it's really sad. And I know that here at Murdoch University, it also occurred here in Western Australia, because I know that Anita's talking about in Queensland. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it did happen here in WA. I believe it does not happen anymore. But yeah, definitely the use of them as blood donors and being euthanised for that blood.
And I wonder again about this, the public perception part, because I've owned on this podcast many times. I'm one of the converted. You know, I used to go to the dogs with my dad. I had no idea about any of this stuff. I wonder if those vets walked into that big room you spoke about and saw a bunch of Labradoodle or a bunch of golden retrievers, how we sort of frame these creatures in our mind, and whether if we shift that.
Such a great question, Matt. And I can barely speak to that because, unlike yourself, I didn't have that history. Yeah. I was not even aware of the whole greyhound racing thing. I hadn't met a greyhound because they were very much confined to the industry, I guess.
Yep.
But to me, they were still just dogs. You know what? We didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
To be honest, so much of this was just buried so deep down because we all had this collective understanding that this is what we had to go through in order to learn and to graduate and to be able to serve animals. So we just sucked it up and got on with it.
Yeah, right. And how long did you last in your veterinary career? Did you have to suck it up for a fair while?
Yeah, I sucked it up for as long as I was in vet school, actually 5 years. So
Right.
this is the frightening reality, and I don't know how these stats have changed since then. But in 5th year, we had one lecture about what to expect in practice. And we were then told that within 5 years, 80% of us will have left private practice and gone on to work in other industries, government, pharmaceutical companies, pet companies, whatever. So I lasted 5 years, and I was, to be honest, by the end I was like ticking down the days going, I've just got to make it to 5 years, right? And I'm out. So that's how long I lasted. I know other people do last longer. I do wonder how they do it.
And it's interesting that they seem to be aware of this attrition rate, and so they must be somewhat aware of the causes of this stuff, and yet they're just ploughing on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's increasing awareness. I think back in my day, they were just starting to do that sort of sociological research into why vets don't last.
Yep.
And they were aware that there's this endless stream of keen, young, idealistic people who love animals and want to do this for the love of the animals, and they were just getting chewed up by these industries. We're being trained as fodder to serve these animal industries, not just the pet sort of side of things, but all the others. And we're being burnt out at 5 years, which is why the vet schools were actually increasing in number, because we had this enormous demand for vets, which was growing. We only had, I think, one vet school in each of the states at that point, certainly only one in my state. I'm aware that they've really multiplied since then, so the number of vets being produced has significantly increased, and yet there's still a shortage of vets, particularly in country areas.
Yeah, right. That's extraordinary. So you moved into, Anita, the animal welfare sort of advocacy space, which I guess was initially what you wanted to do when you thought you wanted to be a vet, that you would be supporting and helping and being a voice for animals, not draining their blood. And eventually you're an advocate for other advocates as well. You know a fair bit about, and you speak to and you address the empathy fatigue and the burnout that occurs. What can you tell us about that, and what do we need to know?
Sure. I guess there's a bit. Most often we tend to hear this term compassion fatigue, first of all, and I just want to differentiate between that and empathy fatigue, because those two things are different. What I was experiencing with the greyhounds in vet practice and even in vet school was empathy fatigue, because empathy is the ability to feel what someone else is feeling, to share in their experience, and to therefore be carrying that emotional load. And that's it. Whereas compassion is feeling the empathy and then a strong motivation to take action to help alleviate the suffering of the other.
Yep.
And so what was available to me as a vet student and as a young vet was empathy. I wanted to step into my compassion. Of course, I would have helped if I could, but there was no avenue for me to do that. I felt completely powerless to do anything about it. So all I could do was sit with those feelings that I felt, the sadness, the despair, the anger, the frustration at the industry, but that was it. And so that empathic exhaustion is what gets you down in the end. It's like that powerlessness, and I think it also leads to a form of secondary trauma. So that was a big part of that. And then, of course, compassion fatigue is really a specific form of burnout that comes once we take action from our empathy when we actually feel empowered.
Yep.
So before we dive into that part of what happens to people who are in these industries or people who are engaging in their compassion and therefore burning out, I actually want to talk about the people who don't even get to that point. So I'm talking about the empathic people out there who may be aware of what is happening, who are being fed information or seeing things but don't actually have any action to take as a result. And so I see this a lot in the animal advocacy space. Both organisations and individuals who care about animals in various spaces are sharing a lot of information out there on social media in particular, and it's posts about the statistics. This has happened in this industry. Another dog has died on this track, or another horse has died on that track. And there's so much of that is just a piece of information. Often there's not even enough information to know where it happened exactly. And that leaves people with nowhere to go. So they just feel the sadness, the frustration, the despair, but there's no action. There's no tangible action to take. So what's missing from a lot of these posts is a clear and tangible call to action.
Right.
Because once there is a call to action, then people can engage in their compassion. Then they can act on that motivation.
Right.
And when they do, they feel a little bit better.
Yep.
They're not stuck in that identifying with the victim and helplessness.
Yep.
They're now like, I've taken an action. I feel good about myself and the fact that I've contributed, even if in a small part, to making a change. And then, of course, that motivates people to take more action.
Yep.
So I always say to people, if you're going to be sharing distressing material out there, make sure it's always accompanied by a powerful call to action so people end up being able to step into their compassion and feeling empowered rather than helpless and being weighed down by empathy fatigue.
Brilliant. I've got a bit of a term for that. It's a bit of a rough term because I see it a lot actually, and I call it tragedy porn.
Yes.
A diving into this sort of tragedy without, as you say, without any agency to act. And I think without the agency, of course you're going to feel hopeless. It's just bad news after bad news after bad news. I haven't heard it quite put that way, that if you don't link that to some level of agency and action, then it's mute, and no one wants to feel powerless and impotent in the face of tragedy. So as you say, tie it to the capacity to feel like you have agency to change.
Yes.
Brilliant. I love that. Oh, geez, I'm stuck. This is really good stuff. This is really good. Because, again, I work in the mental health field with the kids I work with, and I know exactly what it's like when you put vicarious trauma is huge in where I work. And if you don't feel like you're supported by a team to manage that, and if you don't feel like there's a sense that we're doing something together here, then it's just overwhelming. And that's where the compassion fatigue part of it comes in, of course, which is where now you're taking action, but what's happening is the demand on you as that caregiver, the person who's acting from compassion, is just overwhelming. It's insurmountable. And as I mentioned earlier, I think I don't love the word compassion fatigue. Maybe it's because for me it indicates that our compassion can somehow be fatigued or runs out, or our compassion is in some way harming us. It's a finite quantity.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't think compassion should ever be thought of as anything that's either finite or in any way detrimental to us. I think we should have an infinite capacity for compassion. What I prefer to think of it as is burnout. And burnout is, there's a formula to burnout. First of all, it's when we're faced with just an insurmountable amount of work. It seems like the problem we're trying to solve is insurmountable. The enemy we're trying to beat is unbeatable. And it doesn't matter how much of our physical and mental energy we pour into this thing, we're not really seeing that needle moving. It's like the overarching problem we're trying to solve is so huge, we can't really see any shift towards that. So that's one big part. And that alone, when we're so exhausted physically, mentally, it can be enough to lead to burnout. But then on top of that, there's these two other things that tend to happen, which is lack of control or agency once we're actually acting. So one, we feel like we're part of or stuck in a system where we don't have the option but to work within a system to try to create change. And I'm sure you guys experience a bit of that. There's a whole political system and the processes that go with it. You have to act within that. And sometimes it's so frustrating, especially when that system seems to be rigged against you. So not having that, not being able to see yourself actually creating meaningful change day to day, week to week. And then the final part is experiencing, on the balance of things, mainly negative feedback. So whether that is being attacked by opponents of what you're working to achieve, but even more harmful is the kind of infighting that happens within our own movements, within our own organisations, where we're being told either you're not doing enough or you're doing it wrong. That is such a big factor in creating this kind of burnout.
Yeah, that's brilliant. This is such valuable stuff. We, being part of Free the Hounds, I've seen often pro racers can be really vitriolic. And I get it to a degree, because we do want to take something that they really enjoy doing, something that they might have been done in their family for a couple of generations. So I get it. I'm sure the slave owners weren't happy when they were said, you can't do this anymore. Apparently there was a little bit of a kerfuffle over it in America. They had a little bit of a skirmish over the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So I get why they'd be pissed off at us. So we get enough of that attack. But it's when I notice that internecine warfare that happens within the community, when this is just dangerous. We've got to stick together, because the threats are big enough from the outside. So I think that's such a crucial point, isn't it? To hold and think about the cause, not the personalities, or the ends is what counts, not the means perhaps sometimes.
It's not about us. It's about the greyhounds. People have to refocus when that happens.
Yeah.
What's best for them.
Yeah. The other thing you spoke about, Anita, was burnout. I know in the sort of high stress area that I work in, one of the things that we say might guard against that is personal supervision, for a start, but also ensuring that you have a group or a team or a community or something, so you're not holding or shouldering or burdening or whatever it is, all of the responsibility. What would you say, what sort of tools, advice would you give to people listening? And I'm sure there's many of our listeners, I can name a dozen off the top of my head who I know work their asses off, get little sleep. If they're experiencing some of this stuff, empathy fatigue, compassion fatigue, burnout, the lack of agency, what do they need to do? What do you know from your understanding?
Yeah, hopefully I can help these folks a little. There's two sides to it. There is us as an individual person and looking after ourselves. And then there, of course, is a certain amount of responsibility on the leadership of organisations, whether it's rescue groups or campaign organisations. I always say that the culture, it trickles down from the top.
Right.
So whatever the leadership sets as an example is the expectation that's passed on down.
Brilliant.
And people will do their best and they will kill themselves trying to live up to that expectation. So it's really important that leadership sets things up in a helpful way to make their organisation and their people sustainable. But then there's also an onus on individuals to advocate for themselves when they're not getting what they need. And so when we're looking at those three components of burnout, being that overwhelming workload, the endless chronic stress, that's one big component of it. Then there is that the lack of the sense of control over both the ultimate outcome, but if you're a worker bee, if you're a volunteer within an organisation, you may also feel a lack of autonomy or control within your role. And so if you're feeling like you're being told to do things a certain way and you may not 100% agree with that, or may want to offer maybe a better solution, or just have the ability to have some input, maybe shape your role in a particular way, but don't have that can have a similar impact on those people. And they will continue in that role because they're so dedicated to helping those animals, but at the same time it can be unsustainable for them. And then finally, it's that the negativity stuff. So if our leadership is giving us negative feedback, if we're being told you're not turning up to enough volunteer gigs, or you said the wrong thing to that person, you're doing it wrong, and our feedback is consistently negative, that's also quite harmful for us. So in every one of these situations, as an individual, we get to advocate for ourselves. I would hope that the leaders of these kinds of organisations also equip themselves with the right kinds of skills and tools to be able to look after their people and make them more sustainable. But so here's some tips that apply both to leaders for themselves and for their organisation, but also for individuals to advocate for themselves. So first thing is that workload, right? We know that particularly in the rescue space, we are the ambulance parked at the bottom of the cliff. So there is an endless supply of greyhounds being pushed off that top of that cliff by the industry, and we're just doing our best to rescue the ones that we can. So it doesn't matter how little sleep we get, how we give up everything else in life, how we prioritise this rescue work, it'll never be enough. So understanding that is a really great starting point. And then from there, making the decision to look after ourselves first. And I know this is so hard to hear because I talk to so many animal advocates and animal rights activists who say, well, not until every last cage is free. Until then, I cannot justify taking time off, taking a holiday. So what I say is we all need to acknowledge that our little cup will never be enough if we allow ourselves to just get sucked into that system of just giving our all, because it will chew us up and discard us just like it has been with vets or for all so many years. I can see that happening with people in rescue as well. So what I say to my people is prioritize your 5 pillars of health. So for me, that is sufficient sleep. That stops a lot of people right there, right? Sufficient sleep, just a little bit of exercise, bit of physical movement on the regular, some form of appropriate stress management. And I won't go into all of those. We all know what's...
Does whiskey count?
No.
Okay. I'm just checking. You know.
So appropriate stress management, good nutrition, right? And making the time to actually prepare and eat healthy food rather than just be grabbing some junk on the go. And then finally is that community piece. You mentioned that thing about having a network, support network. So having a community, having a love and connection and support in our lives. And part of that is about downtime.
Did you hear that, Gemma?
Yes.
Did you hear that, Mel? I know you're listening, Mel. Have you heard of that term, downtime? Downtime, Mel.
So this comes under both categories of stress management and the community. Really important to get some fun and recreation in there, just some proper play. So that's not with the intention of serving our bigger purpose, but just purely for our own enjoyment. It's so important to recharge our batteries.
Brilliant. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think they all get missed to a degree, sleep. And I know some people who they're as nuts about exercise as they are as about advocacy, so that doesn't get missed, and who eat really well. A bunch of vegans I know that eat beautiful. The one I think often gets missed is the downtime, the space. And I know in the work that I do, if I don't get space, I've got this old thing about, music, right? Music, without the space between the notes, it's just noise. Mm-hmm. You need the space between the doing for the doing to be effective, yeah? Mm-hmm. Especially talking to you, Maleficent. Take a break, downtime. You heard an expert. Anita's an expert. She never listens to me. She might listen to an expert. Downtime, mate.
Yes. So the phrase I like to use to remind people is put your own oxygen mask on first. I think we can all relate to that. We've all flown on a plane. They tell us every single time, put your own mask on first so you can help other people. If we don't pay attention to and prioritize these 5 pillars of health, if any of them is missing, we're going to start getting wobbly and we will not be sustainable at doing the thing that we really want to do.
So ultimately, it's not selfish.
No.
To maintain these things. No. Actually, if you really care about others and you want to be the best and most present and most available and most effective you can be, then these things are important. It's not selfishness.
Yes, which means they get scheduled in as a priority, and then other things in life need to fit in around that. Yep. And I know it's very hard to say no, particularly if, let's say, you're a rescuer and you're being told if you don't take this dog, it's going to get taken out the back and, whatever. And then the pressure is on you. Then that enormous mental and emotional pressure is on you. But if you give into it, if you let them put that on you and you give up one of your pillars of health or multiple in order to save that dog, you know that there'll be another dog and you will never get to look after yourself until you crash.
Yeah, right.
And they don't have the right. It's them creating the problem. They don't have the right to push that burden on you. Yeah. So being prepared to advocate for ourselves, knowing that no matter how much we do will never be enough, we might as well make what we do sustainable.
Yeah. Brilliant. Love it. I'm going to use a lot of this and take it back to my team, actually, because I think it really applies to any area, I think, where you're asked to give a lot of yourself. You're asked to take on, effectively, what we're speaking about is trauma or the results of trauma. And any people who work in that area, I think we often forget our own needs. We often just think it's all out there that needs attending to. In here, I can skip in here because I'm too busy. And it really worries me a lot. I see it a lot. So, folks, keep this in mind. Sleep. Get enough sleep. Get some exercise. Have some kind of stress management. sort of plan, and it's not whiskey, Matthew. Eat well and make sure you've got a community around you, and that you maybe even take downtime with the community and the network that you have.
Yeah.
Get together to do something other than save the world.
Exactly, because that this is the thing that so many animal activists and advocates are saying to me is that outside of their day job, what they do is their activism. And so they're turning up to these events, whatever it is that they're volunteering at, and they're treating it like a second job. They're turning up, they're doing the thing, they're collaborating with the other volunteers there, and then they're going home. And they don't even get to know these people. They don't form community. They're actually feeling super lonely and isolated and unsupported. And they're all feeling this way. And so a very, very simple, basic thing I say to them, because they say, I don't have time for friends and creating friendship and finding, I'm like, you've got a ready-made community right there of people who share your values, who are like-minded.
Kindred spirits already.
Exactly. You've got a ready-made community to tap into. Someone's just got to make the effort to start connecting and saying, hey guys, after this event, why don't we all just go and have dinner together and get to know each other.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it. Just this short chat we've been able to have, Anita, so many sort of light bulbs are going off. But I think unless we keep it forefront in our consciousness, we get swept away with the work itself, with the, again, attending to what's out there and forgetting to fill our own cup before we start offering it to others. Yeah, brilliant. Love it.
I think this was such an important topic that we haven't really had a look at yet. We've had foster carers that describe burnout, and I think we've acknowledged it, but we've never committed a whole episode to it.
I'd love to just add a couple more tips, both the people who are leading organisations, but also the advocates to advocate for themselves.
Yes,
because I've kind of addressed just the first part, which was that overwhelming workload, but there were those two other things, which is that feeling of a lack of control over the ultimate outcome. And a way to address that is to not only be measuring success by the ultimate outcome, so in this case, phasing out of greyhound racing, but all of the milestones and wins along the way, and even just the actions. As an organisation, you set yourself these actions that you need to complete, creating the survey, for example, and then getting the results from that, just being able to say, we've done this thing. This was a huge thing. Let's celebrate that we've got this done. And now look at these results. Let's celebrate the outcome of those results. Let's celebrate that we got X number of petition signatures. Let's celebrate that we've got an inquiry up. So taking the time regularly to celebrate these milestones does allow us to feel like we're actually making progress, like that enormous insurmountable thing is no longer so insurmountable. So that's one thing. And then the other is for those volunteers within these groups and organisations, just giving them a little bit of extra autonomy. That doesn't mean let them run wild, but if they do have a suggestion, maybe let them test it out as a small experiment. If they think that something could be done better, maybe just give them a little bit of autonomy. Maybe allow them to make their role their own if they've got a particular role within the organisation, to kind of shape that so they can make the best use of their skills and talents in service of that. When people feel that they have autonomy, they are so much more motivated and more sustainable at that. And so that was that part of it. And then, of course, around that whole how to deal with the criticism, both external, which is probably easier to deal with because we can understand it, but that internal stuff, I think it really is on the leadership to model really good, effective, non-violent communication, and to make sure that the people within the organisation, the volunteers, are aware of just the basic rules of engagement, and maybe if they need a little bit of help with just training them in communicating in a way with others so that we are not doing this thing that you described earlier, Matt, of tearing each other down and destroying our movement from within. So, obviously the onus is on all of us to learn to communicate better and in that kind of non-violent way. But if we've got leaders who not only are modelling it, but also helping us to learn it, that's really great.
Yeah, I love that last one in particular. Again, staying mostly away from social media. When I do jump in a little bit, I often see vitriolic and personal and just really ugly attacks. But I often see people on our side, so to speak, responding in kind with personal attacks. And I've often thought, you're joining them in their arena now. Just hold your arena, hold your space. And our space is about a solid argument, about facts, about compassion, about welfare. So if we jump into their little space, which is about personal attacks, spurious arguments, we're going to get caught in the weeds, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. See this happen so much, because then they can set up a straw man argument of, look at how mean and nasty you're being, and that's where the whole argument goes then, and it diverts away from the facts. And I'm convinced that the opponents of our movements do this intentionally. They goad us until we snap, and we can't help but get personal in return, and then that's it. We've lost the argument.
Yeah. And I think they do that because they know we would win otherwise. If we hold our integrity, hold the space of truth, they're a bit lost. So they pull us over. Come over here where we'll just get nasty and we'll get muddy, and then we'll muddy up the arguments. And yeah. Fantastic. This is such good stuff. I'm going to book my own session in, I think. Thank you so much, Anita. That was such a valuable episode, and I'm going to take a lot away from it myself. I hope Maleficent is going to listen strongly to this one too, because
she has to. We'll sit her down and make sure it gets in her ears.
I was looking at the five things Anita talked about. I don't know if Mel's got one of them covered, frankly. I don't think she has. No, and I admire her and I love her to bits. And again, she just donated a freaking liver. So I think you got to look up. You've only got one liver. So she just went, no, I don't need it. And that's what you're speaking to, isn't it? No, yes. You've got to put your own liver on before you put someone else's on.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Thanks, Anita.
Thank you so much, Anita.
Thank you both. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye. That was such incredible, valuable information. I related to that quite a bit, actually, just the work that I do. Lots of stuff that seems rational and logical that you maybe forget in the midst of the emotion of advocating, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, she's pretty amazing. And I think taking into account those 5 pillars that she was talking about.
Yes, Mel.
And the difference between the burnout versus empathy fatigue, it's really valuable information.
Go check it out. The link will be in the podcast as well. I don't know if Mel will be back next week, but anyway, I've missed her. Missed you, Maleficent. It's harder to do it without your community, and Mel's not part of it. She's the leader of the community, really. She's my personal inspiration. So I hope you're back soon, Mel. Love you to bits. Let's keep listening, keep talking, keep advocating, and keep looking after yourself as we release the hounds.